Hello friends, my name is Father John Perricone. I am a professor of philosophy at St. Francis College in Brooklyn, New York. I've been with you on several occasions in this series of talks. And our theme for these last few has been St. Thomas Aquinas' proofs for God's existence. We took time in the other ones to talk about the first proof, where St. Thomas demonstrates that God can be called the unmoved mover. That is, insofar as things are engaged in movement, we have to, the human intellect demands, that's important, the human intellect demands that we come upon or identify something which is the mover of all this movement, which itself requires no movement. Well, what if we found a mover that required movement? Well, then I would ask you, what moved that? And then what about if that mover required movement? Well, you see where this is going. It goes ultimately nowhere, and we never arrive at something that got the whole thing in motion, but we know there's motion. There had to be one mover, the unmoved mover. We then went to the second proof. St. Thomas talks about God as the uncaused cause. Same thing going on. We look at things in the world. We recognize that everything in the world simply never started being here by itself. Everything owes its beginning to something outside itself. Every effect has cause. Nothing is intelligible in and of itself. And so Thomas, similarly in the first proof, moves on to talk about the fact that there must be something that caused everything else to be, and that he calls the uncaused cause. We then went on to that third proof, which is that proof from contingency to a necessary being. That word in philosophy, contingency, just means dependent upon. What St. Thomas is telling us to look at is the common sense observation that everything we see and experience, everything in the world of nature, depends for its existence on something else. It doesn't have existence within itself. My goodness, if it did, then it would be God, and it would never go out of existence. But it does. St. Thomas says, well, everything receiving existence had to receive it from somewhere else, had to receive it from someone who has existence as its very nature. And this thing we call God, the necessary being. By the way, all of these proofs are the genius of St. Thomas, is to derive them all from that book of Exodus where God, Yahweh, identifies himself as I am who am. He wants to be known as, and he has his name. His name is who am. God is. He is. He's pure existence. This is what directs St. Thomas's mind. In fact, St. Thomas, by virtue of considering this point in Revelation, recognizes that it illuminates natural reason to such an extent that he then places as the hallmark of all reality existence. Of course, it would take us several months to speak about how that distinguishes him from all the centuries of philosophy that went before him, and why it's so critically important for a valid understanding of anything. But that's the text. I am who am. God is the necessary being. Nothing limits God's existence. Nothing determines his existence. Third proof. Fourth proof we went over. It's a little bit more complex. We devoted a whole lot of time to it. Essentially it is, I look and see that things in creation have more or less being, more or less goodness. And if something has more or less of anything, we wouldn't say more or less unless we were measuring against something that's perfect. You see, the very terms more, less, already assume that there is something there that is everything, in which you participate in a way that is more or less. St. Thomas says that God is that perfect being in which we have participated. So if I am good, it's because God allows me to participate in His goodness. If I am wise, it's because He allows me to participate in His wisdom. But now we come upon probably St. Thomas's most colorful and his most persuasive proof for God's existence, especially in the conditions that we find ourselves in our contemporary culture. Our contemporary culture has been dominated by the figure of Charles Darwin, amongst many others. Perhaps we should go back even further. Our contemporary culture is dominated by Descartes. We're going back 400 years to the beginning of the 17th century. Beginning with Descartes, he literally said that there is no purpose, along with Darwin, in existence. And in a purposeless world, there are all kinds of consequences that flow from that. Darwin kind of teased them out a great deal in the 19th century. But, well, you know the argument. Everything is here simply by virtue of chance. If you have, remember your statistics course in college, or remember helping your children with their statistics course now, you know they study probability. Well, very much in the contemporary culture, even contemporary science speaks about everything that we see here is merely a matter of a convergence of complex and sophisticated probabilities. Now, what does that mean? It means that nothing is here because it followed an order. It's just simply here accidentally, fortuitously. Well, St. Thomas is going to counter that argument in the fifth proof. That's why you're going to find it so valuable. Clearly, he is not cognizant of Descartes or Darwin, but he is cognizant of a position that they would hold, and that's what he wants to refute here. Let's begin with the proof step by step, because as we said in past series, St. Thomas is never superficial. He's never unnecessarily complex, but he's never superficial. He wants us to think with clarity. Sometimes thinking with clarity takes a lot of work, but in the end, a lot of work doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means we shouldn't be lazy. St. Thomas calls this fifth proof the proof from finality. Notice he doesn't call it the proof from design. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. He says it's the proof from finality. I want you to dust off your old philosophy books. Remember Aristotle's four causes. Material, formal, those are intrinsic. And then there's final and there's efficient. I don't want to define all of them, but you might remember the definition of a final cause. A final cause is that the purpose for which something is done. I'll say it again. Final cause is the purpose for which a thing is done. Remember that. When we use the term finality, we are talking about that condition under which a thing acts for a purpose. Hence, St. Thomas is going to call this proof the proof from finality. You already know a lot about it. It means that if we look at the world, we look at the universe, not only one sliver of it, every part of it, we will see that everything which acts for a purpose or an end. I said to you that St. Thomas leaves nothing out of that general statement, and I'm true to my word. There are some things that we look at in creation, and it's very clear to us that they act for a purpose. let's say the bumblebee. We see how she goes from flower to flower. She has a specific task to do. Then she goes back to her beehive. And ultimately there's the production of honey. She acts with a purpose, doesn't she? Squirrels. I was on a park bench the other day. It's autumn here in New York. And I saw the squirrels coming around me. They don't come too close because they're afraid. But they were going about doing a business. They were going about doing work very conscientiously, very methodically. That work was purposeful. Collecting acorns, burying them, running up the tree. The robin redbreast. She builds a nest, purposeful. But even in the inanimate world, the world without life, an atom, an electron, a photon, it moves, doesn't it? It moves in a particular way. It acts in a particular way. Chemists put together something called the periodic chart of the elements. We remember that from our high school days. What are they saying? That each and every element in the universe acts in a particular way, acts for a purpose. Well, St. Thomas is asking us the following question. Why? Why does everything act for a purpose? The next question is this. In order to have purpose, you have to have intelligence. Only an intellect can know that I must do something for a particular reason in order to achieve a proper effect. When the bumblebee goes from flower to flower, she's acting methodically, but she doesn't know she's acting methodically. She hasn't gone to school. No bumblebee does. No atom does. But they act in a manner that is invariant. It's determined. That's the notion of finality. That the thing is producing an act. It's going this way and not that way. Why this way and not that way? Why is it doing this and not that? Whether it be the electron or whether it be your pet cat Cynthia. They act with purpose. But who gave them that purpose? The atom doesn't know what it's doing. Well, yes, the bumblebee knows because it has eyes. It knows what flower to land on. But it doesn't know why it's doing all that. But it gets it done. Bumblebee, the atom, the chimpanzee, all act with purpose. Since they could not get that purpose from themselves, they had to have gotten it from a supreme intelligence, because only intelligence knows purpose. And Thomas says that supreme intelligence, that one who gives purpose, is called God. It's brilliant. Let's take Darwin for a moment. He said that everything acted by chance. Well, there is no chance. There happens to be accidental occurrences, but remember, the very word chance assumes purpose. It assumes order. Otherwise, the word chance would have no meaning. It means that it's an exception from something that's already there, that's ordered. So yes, you might have sitting in a diner and someone comes and you find that it's your friend. They come and sit with you. It wasn't planned. It was a chance. But notice what went into the chance. You acting in an ordered fashion by coming to that diner to have coffee, met another person by chance who themselves were acting purposefully and met you by chance. Chance is simply the accidental meeting of two purposeful things, acting according to their nature, acting according to a purpose, an end, a finality. There's no chance. Darwin is wrong. Everything that we see in creation, developed, acts for purpose. You see, if there is not purpose, the thing doesn't act at all. What about if I said to you, do? You would wait. Why would you wait? Because I didn't tell you what to do. Only by knowing what to do does your action have order. So with everything in creation, no matter what it is, its actions are ordered according to an end or purpose. God placed it there for them. God placed order in the finality in the universe so that everything cannot escape acting for a purpose. Some skeptics might say, Father, but St. Thomas can't explain why is a Hurricane Katrina happen? Why are there diseases? Why are these volcanoes and tsunamis? Those are all accidents. Well, no, they're not. Well, they're events that were not foreseen, but remember, each and every one of them happens because every element in it is acting according to its nature. It's acting according to a purpose that God gave it. It did not give itself. You'll find that very useful in your discussions with skeptics. And I found it a great pleasure to be with you in this lecture. God bless you.